Today, we are going to introduce Tsai Shi, an outstanding female doctor from the Japanese colonial era in Taiwanese history. Tsai was born in 1895 in Taipei during the Japanese colonization period. She died on March 5th, 1990, in Vancouver, Canada. She was the first Taiwanese woman to receive modern medical training. Here, you can see a picture of Tsai. When Tsai was 5 years old, her father passed away. After her father's death, her mother sent her to live with a clergyman. He was planning to adopt her. However, Tsai walked all the way back to her mother's home. Her mother again transported her to the clergyman, but Tsai again walked back home. At this point, the clergyman gave up trying to adopt her, and Tsai continued to live with her mother. You can see here a picture that demonstrates how far the young Tsai walked on her own. After she returned to her mother, Tsai's mother married once again. Her new stepfather loved her very much, so much that he refused to have her bear the pain of feet binding after her mother suggested the practice. He asked Tsai's mother not to, and she agreed. At the age of 6, Tsai's stepfather sent her to study at a private school. Tsai had a fantastic memory. It took her only 1 month to learn the 3-character classic. Once Tsai turned 8, she studied in Dadaojang Public School. At the time, she was only the second girl at the school. The first girl was bullied by the boys and ended up leaving. This left Tsai as the only girl, and the teachers were afraid that she too would be bullied and forced away. So, one of the teachers sent her home, bringing her personally to explain the problem. Later, at the age of 12, Tsai studied at the Dansui Girls' School. This was the first school for girls in Taiwan. Tsai was one of the school's first students, and at the time she enrolled, she was also the school's youngest student. Here, you can see a picture of the Dansui Girls' School. Later, at the age of 18, Tsai graduated from the Dansui Girls' School. Before she graduated, a Canadian teacher suggested that she should study at a medical school in Japan. At first, Tsai's mother did not like this idea. She felt that it was not safe for a young girl to travel so far alone, and many of her neighbors told her there was no reason for a girl to study so much. But the more opposition she faced, the more determination Tsai felt, and eventually she went to Japan. After arriving in Japan, Tsai studied Japanese for 2 years in preparation for entering medical school in the country. She then entered the Tokyo Women's Medical University. There, she had to dissect bodies and learn the names of various human organs. For her first 3 days, she was haunted by nightmares. Further, there was so much schoolwork in medical school that she wanted to give up. In Japan, there was an organization for Taiwanese students who were studying there. Tsai attended the organization, but she learned that she was the only girl who was a member. This made her feel shy. However, it also introduced her to Taiwanese youth who were passionate about education and ardent about social revolution. In 1921, Tsai finished studying and she returned to Taiwan. Her specialty was gynecology, a medical field specific to the treatment of women and meeting their medical needs. However, there were no jobs in gynecology at the time in Taiwan. So instead, she practiced with an oculist. Oculist being an outdated term not used today that refers to a doctor who treats problems with the eyes. This oculist had Tsai lie down on the bed and wear a blindfold, pretending she was completely blind for 3 days. Tsai realized how difficult the life of a blind person truly is. Through this, she learned about empathy and about sympathy for her patients. This experience greatly shaped her future. In 1924, Tsai started her own business at her home in Taipei. Also in 1924, Tsai was persuaded by Chiang Wei-shui to marry a man named Peng Huaying. However, after Chiang passed away, Peng began to grow more distant from Tsai. Later, under pursuit from the police, he fled to mainland China. In China, he met another woman and divorced Tsai. Here, you can see some pictures of both Tsai and Peng, as well as Chiang. Later, in 1926, Tsai founded a hospital in Taichung. This hospital was called the Qingxing Clinic. Because of the empathy for her patients Tsai learned with the oculist, she worked to keep the fees for medical treatment low and to make the hospital accessible to the poor. She also supported the poor by giving away baby clothes and cans of milk. Here you can see a picture of the staff of the Qingxing Clinic. Tsai also saw poor hygiene and other medical problems, including low levels of medical skill in her surrounding community. In response to these challenges, Tsai set up the Qingxing Midwife School in 1927. This school enrolled 30 students twice per year, and for its students, meals and accommodations were free. Several years later, the school had educated many midwives and improved the experience of childbirth in Taichung. Because of this, Tsai earned the nickname the Mother of Taichung. Here you can see a picture of the school she founded and the students who were enrolled at the time. In 1937, Japan engaged in a war in East Asia, and Taiwan was involved. Because of the war, students began rapidly withdrawing from her midwife school. Tsai closed the hospital and school in response to the low enrollment and to changes that were happening. In 1938, Tsai went to a well-known university in America to engage in research. Places she visited in America included Harvard Medical School. Then, in 1941, she worked at the St. Vincent Hospital in Canada. Because of her identity, she was accused of illegally practicing medicine in Canada. However, she was found innocent and cleared of all charges. After World War II ended, Tsai returned to Taiwan. The year was 1946, and she wanted to contribute to her home country. However, after the 228 incident, Tsai found herself disappointed in her country's government. In 1949, Tsai married Gibson, a foreign clergyman. 4 years later, Tsai and her husband permanently settled in Canada. In 1979, Tsai came back to Taiwan to visit relatives, and the following year, she again returned to Taiwan to establish the Chi Sung Service Foundation, along with friends and family. This foundation provided mental care and health consultations for the poor, for widows, and for senior citizens. Again, we see the great empathy she learned in her time as an oculist manifest in her treatment of people who have little money or who are otherwise struggling. In 1990, Tsai passed away in Canada, where she had lived for many years. In 2005, Formosa TV adopted the novel Lang Tao Sa, which dramatized the life story of Tsai. Here you can see a picture of both the novel and of the cover of the DVD version of the television program.